Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Tom McGarry, Andy, and Nishant, for this very interesting session. We now come to the end of the workshop technical sessions, and I would like to invite Ms. Pamela Kumar, Director General TSDSI, and Mr. Ken Koffman, CTO TIA, to make the concluding remarks on the workshop. So I'd like to introduce Ms. Pamela Kumar to the audience. Pamela is the Director General of TSDSI and is also the founding chair and current president at Cloud Computing Innovation Council of India. She's also serving as a Bharti Chair, visiting professor at UIET, Punjab University. Pamela is an alumnus of PEC Chandigarh, Rutgers University, and IIM Bangalore. She brings with her over 30 plus years experience in communications, computers, and semiconductor industry, where she led many nascent projects into breakthrough businesses. I'll also introduce Ken. Mr. Ken Koffman is the Senior Vice President of Standards and Technology, responsible for assuring that all our communities add value for our members and participants. His team oversees the processes as well as execution of standards at TIA, in addition to the TIA Quest Forum. Ken is a charter member of Quest Forum and author of both TL 9000 handbooks and an acknowledged industry expert. He has served on the board of directors of TIA for over 10 plus years. So over to you, Pamela and Ken, for the concluding remarks of the workshop. Pamela, you're mute.
Thanks, Bindu, and good to be here with you, Ken. It's been really at the outset, I would say it's been a a really engaging 2 evenings with a lot of good insights and a lot of energy in the panels and the sessions. I think a big difference from the last session, I would say. I think we've had a we were all the hard work that has been put by the organizers on each session is kind of showing up, that we had very high quality dialogue and discussions and content in each of the sessions. So thank you very much, Bindu, Rebecca, and all the others who have worked with you, evening after evening. I know so many meetings were being set up in order to make this happen. Thanks also to all the panelists and the chairs of the various sessions on handpicking all these eminent experts and bringing them together here. I could see that they were all each one of them was thoroughly enjoying the sessions because they were so rich in content, and there was so much learning going on there. So going back to a brief summary from my perspective, I think the first two, the sessions on data center and supply chain security. So in data centers, um, uh, I really liked Jacques' phrase, the services defined network. That this is what defines 5G. I think that's a beautiful term. If it is Jacques, well, hats off to him if he has coined it, or if it's from somewhere else, whoever has done it. It's the first time I heard it. So services defined network is really captures the essence of 5G, and his qualifying statement that now it's left to the imagination of the applications, what they can do with all this technology. So and the network will adapt to meet their creativity, and I think that's a very good way of putting it. But in today's session, which we had with the intelligent transport guys, I could still see the people saying that, but it's a chicken and egg situation. Only if the vendors agree will you get what you want. So application guys can dream or what technology can enable for them. So it's a complex problem, and that's where bodies like TIA and TSDSI have a very key role to play, and us coming together can really make a difference. So in data centers, I think the point that came out very strongly was the fact that maybe we should think about uh, uh, a new type of data center which is fully autonomous, which is small, or which is scalable, modular, which can plug and play. And the panelists there believe that the ecosystem is ready for these, with all the edge computing that's being talked about and the kind of applications there'll be a need for, like maybe almost like an access point that or there's somebody said it's like an air conditioner or a refrigerator, right, that you can just put data centers all over the place, except that refrigerators don't talk to each other, right? so I think that was interesting, and the fact that we can probably think about developing standards for something like this is a potential opportunity to think about, and also the TIA data center technologies, the standards that we have. Can we look at doing more capacity building in this space? And specifically, I would say there is a potential that we could engage with the, if we could leverage TIA and engage with the right parties here to look into test and certification of the data centers in India. Okay, extending that, and there are in the certain government agencies which are being mandated to become the test and certification bodies. So there is a need there that we can fill in the immediate future. So these are the 2 points that I have on the data center. Then similarly on supply chain security, I think the architecture, the SCS architecture that was presented by, I think, David, right? So the SCS 9001 architecture, which talks about the 8 principles to determine suppliers that can be trusted. It talks about zero trust architecture, right? Asset classes. So that was very, very interesting, and I think there's a lot of experience and real life experience and knowledge and learning of which has gone into this architecture, and that's something that definitely has interested our community also, and there's an interest to maybe learn that, understand that, and maybe bring it into India in some form. What we are struggling with here, or what seems to be gaining momentum here, is more IoT security and data security, data protection, privacy. Those are the topics that are being discussed in TSDSI today. And if there is a linkage there, can we get into some kind of an arrangement here to take this baseline of TIA standard and then embrace it or adapt it for the kind of requirements that are emerging here? So that's the other opportunity for ongoing collaboration, because our perspective on this workshop has really been, where are those opportunities? That was the objective we started with. Let's try to bring people together who will see a need to have a ongoing engagement. And so these are some of the things that come to mind here. Then on the service performance reliability, so that is an amazing area, and I think Jacques again made a very good presentation, and the way he showed the different use cases and their SLAs that they need in terms of density and speed and availability. So that really again the uniqueness of what 5G is gearing up for, and the desire that the community or the vision of 5G needs, when you translate it into real use cases, this is the range of SLAs that the network needs to adapt to. So the concept of minimum performance requirement is very important. And in the V2X discussion, again there were a range of things, and I liked the opinion that there is a lot that a lot of things which it's not that 4G cannot address them, right? There's a lot of things requirements there which 4G is built, but it just hasn't been matured in that there's a lot of gaps in the way it has been deployed, and maybe that's going to happen with 5G as well. That we in the semiconductor world, I know that before we really extracted the value of a particular node, we would jump to the next node, because the semiconductor guys would start, the fabs would start manufacturing the next geometry. So I think I see a similar kind of situation here, but I think the concept of moving from best effort networks to reliable networks with guaranteed minimum performance is especially in the data space. I think voice, we were always used to, voice networks were nailed and engineered very thoroughly to provide you that minimum guaranteed performance, right? But the data has been best effort. The data world has been best effort. But now with data getting into mission critical, right, and getting into lifeline applications, the need for guaranteed minimum performance is very important, and that's what you're trying to address. But what came across was that this is a very it's still evolving. It's early stages in service performance reliability, and there seems to be a deep interest on both sides, and maybe we need to investigate more how we can engage in this space. So there are three levels of engagement, right? There are the pre-standardization, the standards development, and the post-standardization areas that we could engage in, and we need to see where we can do those collaborations, especially. So there is a lot of interest. It's a very important topic, but what is the nature of engagement? I think needs the people who have participated in this to come, or people in the audience to maybe suggest more. And finally, I think a very insightful and discussion on the interoperability of the mobile mission critical systems, that Andy and Nishant, I think it brought in a lot of clarity. And this is again a very important topic within TSDSI right now, to help architect the disaster management communication infrastructure for the next gen of it, right? And it's a very important need, because the old infrastructure is obviously ready to be obsoleted. So but as Nishant very readily pointed out, I mean, Nishant and the team that has been working on this, they actually did a very detailed survey going to all these disaster management people, door to door, literally to all the police departments across the states, and all these other government agencies. I don't even know the names of all these agencies that form the entire disaster management infrastructure in India. So they had created a big for help with appointments and stuff like that. So there's a lot of real legwork that they have done, and the vast learning and knowledge that they have right now, and understanding that they have of the system, and is huge, and there is a big need that we have to engage in this space. So with that, I would hand it over to you, Ken. Ken, we can't hear you. Should I mute myself?
Let me see. There you go.
I had to wait for the organizer to let me speak. Thank you. So first of all, on behalf of TIA, our planning team, and our India hub, I want to thank Mr. Subramanian, Pamela, Bindu, the entire TIA team, all of the session chairs, and the speakers for, I think, what was a very excellent 2 days of topics. We really talked about 4 key topics that are associated with 5G deployments. Both very important, necessary, the whole concept of data centers, security, service reliability, performance, and public safety. All of those are key elements within 5G. And I know Pamela did a great job of summarizing much of what was discussed there, but I do hope our audience gained value from a forum which brought together government participants, regulatory bodies, operators, ICT vendors, and application vendors. It's really, it's what we as SDOs do. We want to make sure that we get the appropriate parties all together so that we can deliver and drive the appropriate standards to support the industry. I won't redo what Pamela, she covered much of the notes that I had taken on the sessions, but there are a few takeaways that I think were noteworthy in addition to what Pamela reviewed. First, on the data centers, the shift to the edge is an important change that's going to be associated with 5G, and how we do that effectively, assuring the reliability and the security, are going to be critically important to 5G success. We also heard from that session that at least one group wants to put a data center on Mars and the Moon. Very aggressive goals. So I'll let them achieve that. That one's a little bit beyond my scope. In the supply chain security discussion, we talked about security by design, a very important concept. In the panel, which was a lively panel, we discussed what is going to be necessary so that the entire supply chain can be considered secure. Classically, folks have been working very actively on hardening their operations. And we've primarily talked about the operators and the tier 1 vendors. But with 5G, there's so much of a dependency on suppliers, whether they be application providers or those that provide IoT devices, IoT applications, components. If we don't have a standard that supports us throughout the supply chain, we'll have a number of breaches which will be devastating. And then lastly, on the supply chain, there was a discussion about the need for security-related performance measurements. And that is certainly a mantle that we will take up. On service performance or service reliability, interesting, and Pamela really emphasized this. In classic ICT today, we look at average performance. And for the very high reliability applications of 5G, that's not going to be reliable enough. I think Jacques provided the example of remote surgery. We can't deal with average performance. This minimum reliability requirement is going to be necessary. But in that same panel, there was a great discussion about the economics of 5G. Who's going to pay for the investment required to provide that level of reliability? And I think it's a topic that's real, and is something that we as SDOs and those who drive thought leadership are going to need to continue to pursue. And then we heard just the wide variety of activity focusing in on public safety standards from Nishant and Andy, which I very much appreciate. There's lots of work, but with 5G, there is a significantly enhanced need for how we deal with public safety providers and how we assure public safety for all consumers. All through this, I think we're hearing a common message, and this is where I look to try to collaborate with TSDSI more and more, is that standards are needed to help accelerate the deployment of technology. Too often we hear that standards retard innovation, that there's so much information that is, or so many requirements that slow down this innovation. And that's exactly wrong. We need to have the minimum level of requirements and appropriate protocols that accelerates that deployment. And for 5G, these areas that we talked about today were just 4 great examples of how we can work together to do exactly that. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to work together with TSDSI. I hope the audience was able to get value from what we delivered, and I look forward to much more in the way of cooperation and interactions between our 2 groups. So thanks again for the opportunity, and on behalf of TIA, we very much appreciate everyone's involvement. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Pamela, for those very comprehensive concluding remarks. As you mentioned, there is a lot of potential for mutual collaboration between TSDSI and TIA on these topics which are not may not have been mainstream, but are critically important. So we'll take that message and work offline bilaterally on taking these items forward. And before we end the workshop today, it's my pleasant duty to acknowledge the tireless efforts of the various TSDSI TIA team members who worked in the background to make this workshop the success it has been over the last 4 months. So I'd especially like to mention the following persons. From TIA, Mr. Dave Stalin, Mr. Ken Koffman, Mr. Jacques Plouet, Mr. Arun Malik, Mr. Ashok Dandekar, Mr. S.M. Bala, Mr. Raju Vadalkar, Mr. Venkata Krishnan, and Mr. Sriram. From TSDSI, Mr. N.G. Subramaniam, Ms. Pamela Kumar, Mr. Sharad Arora, Mr. R. Prakash, Mr. A.K. Mittal, and Mr. Vijay Madan. So thank you very much, sirs and ma'am, for supporting us in making this workshop a huge success. Just to remind the attendees, the presentation and the session recordings would be made available on the event website shortly. You will also receive a feedback form from the organizers. Do fill in the feedback and help us improve our workshops for the future. With that, we come to the close of this workshop. Thank you very much for staying with us. Bye-bye.
And special thank you to Bindu and Rebecca and Shifali and Asif, who really burnt the midnight oil here on this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure. Pleasure working with everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
I know.